Well, now to our continuing coverage of the Ryan Routh trial. 1 year ago today, Routh was arrested after a close call at Trump International Golf Course.
An intruder with an assault rifle came within range of then presidential candidate Donald Trump. Routh is representing himself. We're now in week 2 of testimony. The prosecution is still calling witnesses, and Routh is cross-examining each one. Yeah,
let's get out right now to CBS 12's Treasure Coast reporter Jack Wu, who is joining us with the latest proceedings.
Ryan Routh has been more assertive in court, definitely more today than I've seen him previously. There's definitely more of a confidence in his courtroom presence, but he's still having a hard time. Some potential strong moments for Ryan Routh quickly dashed by federal prosecutors and Judge Cannon. Routh's attempts to cross-examine witnesses came to a halt because he keeps going back to something the judge told him to leave alone. While questioning an evidence coordinator from the FBI headquarters, Routh repeatedly asked about testing of the rifle's accuracy. Prosecutors objected, and they cited a previous ruling that deemed that line of questioning irrelevant to the charges. Routh also grilled a firearms expert who said he recovered the weapon's serial number except for the last letter. With a finite number of possibilities, Routh asked why the FBI didn't just plug in every letter and see if anything came back. This was yet another instance of Routh asking the right question to the wrong witness, as the expert told him this could only be answered by the case agent. And some surprising moments. Judge Cannon got involved with Routh's defense by objecting on his behalf multiple times during prosecution questioning. She called prosecutors' questions leading several times, a move we haven't seen since things got underway last week. The firearms expert who tested the weapon at the crime scene was particularly compelling, painting a clear picture of a man who could have killed Donald Trump. Even though Routh's questioning during cross hasn't been successful to this point, he seems to be adapting, asking questions of more relevance each day. We'll have to see how that plays out as prosecutors are scheduled to end their argument by Thursday. We'll bring you the latest developments in this case as they happen. But for now, reporting in Fort Pierce, I'm Jack Wu, CBS 12 News.
Coverage of the Ryan Routh trial, the man accused of attempting to assassinate Donald Trump on the golf course last September.
Yeah, Routh was making waves in the courtroom today. During cross-examination, he had repeatedly questioned a witness about the accuracy of a rifle allegedly used despite the judge previously warning him to stop using that line of questioning.
But the judge has also raised some objections on Routh's behalf. CBS 12 News Treasure Coast reporter Jack Wu was in the courtroom today and has the latest. Jack?
Jim, Liz, there's so much physical and digital evidence, the jury really taking in a lot of the details. And just when it seemed like Ryan Routh was finding his footing, acting as his own attorney, he dropped a bombshell about one of his own witnesses. Ryan Routh intended to call his own son as a witness for the defense, but Orrin Routh has been taken off the witness list. He is currently serving a 7-year sentence for possession of child pornography. Bringing him to Fort Pierce is too much. While Judge Aileen Cannon and Routh had a heated exchange on the topic, the judge came to his defense later in the day, objecting to multiple prosecution questions on Routh's behalf, calling the phrasing of those questions leading. Despite that, however, there is no getting around the fact that prosecutors are rolling out a trove of digital evidence tying Routh to multiple burner phones and hateful speech against Donald Trump. An FBI cell phone analyst testified about pinpointing Routh's location to the scene of the crime. A growing pile of prosecution evidence and that shrinking defense witness list raises the question, how will Routh defend himself when it's his turn to put on his case? Routh previously made sarcastic comments to witnesses, but today he aimed them at the judge. When she told him to move on and stop harping on the accuracy of the rifle, he said, "I guess I'm not allowed any further questions." She did not take kindly to this and reminded Routh that it was his choice on whether or not he wanted to follow the rules. There's still a lot of trial left to go, and we'll bring you the updates as they happen. Reporting in Fort Pierce, I'm Jack Wu, CBS 12 News.
Attempting to assassinate President Trump faced new testimony in court.
New evidence was also revealed, including a letter Routh wrote about his plan, and the jury heard from a witness who sold Routh the weapon in question.
Our Treasure Coast reporter Jack Wu is joining us outside the federal courthouse in Fort Pierce with the very latest.
Routh, before coming to Florida, started preparing for this in Greensboro, North Carolina, acquiring a gun and a prepaid cell phone that he would later use as a burner phone, and that letter. Some compelling evidence from the prosecution, and Routh doesn't deny writing it. This was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but I am so sorry I failed you. Those are the first words Routh wrote in a 12-page Dear World letter found in one of his former employees' homes. Routh previously admitted to writing the letter, but says it was taken out of context. And a major witness testified against Routh, a man named Ronnie Oxendine. He was found guilty of possession of an illegal firearm back in July. He recounted selling the SKS rifle to Routh with the serial number visible. It would later be obliterated. The jury saw surveillance video of Routh purchasing a prepaid phone prior to the incident, a phone he later used at the scene of the crime. Jurors saw messages sent back and forth between Oxendine and another friend of Routh talking about serial numbers. This is week 2 of the trial, and Routh has never tried to deny that he was the man on the golf course. This has been a long haul, and from what I saw in the courtroom, it seems to be taking a toll on the jury. Over 24 witnesses have testified in front of them so far, with more to go. They also don't seem too captivated by Routh's cross-examination questions or his antics. Quite frankly, there's so much evidence being presented each day. It seems like the court is dragging. Now, Routh could start his case as early as Friday, but we'll have to see how things go tomorrow. We'll bring you all the updates as they happen. Reporting in Fort Pierce, I'm Jack Wu, CBS 12 News.
Routh had accepted an attempt to assassinate President Donald Trump and is representing himself in this high-profile federal case. The prosecution calling another group of witnesses today, but the judge sending the jury home early. Much of this testimony has been long and highly technical, and the trial is expected to continue now for into next week. CBS 12's I-Team Chief Mike Magnoli is joining us now to go over some of the highlights from this day.
Hey there, everybody. I'm seeing some of the vehicles from the Federal Protective Services moving around, so they might be bringing Routh out of court for the day. So let me take you through some of the highlights. Something that really jumped out at me was from an expert witness who was on the stand this morning, and he was talking about how a golf course is really an ideal spot for a sniper because where the ball goes, that's where the target is going to go next, and he's going to be there for a while he prepares to take his next swing. So that's an opportunity for the sniper to open fire on a target. Routh on cross-exam was quick to point out that he never opened fire that day. And that seems to be a theme that he's going for throughout these proceedings, is that his intent was not to assassinate Donald Trump. Something else that was interesting. A detective who was on the stand late this afternoon went over video evidence that was obtained from Palm Beach International Airport. There was something that happened that's noteworthy on September 7th. That's when Trump's private plane was taking off from the airport, and Routh was seen on many cameras inside the airport observing the plane. Specifically, he was at a row of windows in the atrium that looked out to the runway. Well, the prosecution wants to show this to the jury so that they regard this as him surveilling Trump and trying to learn the movements of his target. But Routh was quick to point out on cross-exam, look, a lot of people are interested in the president's plane. It's not illegal to go look at it or to take pictures of it. He even talked about something that happened that day. I guess where he sat down in the atrium, there was a lady's handbag on the seat next to his, and he thought, see something, say something. So he went and he talked to a security guard, and he was like, listen, this bag seems to be unattended. Is this okay? And so he's trying to show the jury, I wasn't doing anything nefarious if I'm talking to a security guard. But a lot of his cross-exam has been kind of bumbly, and this is supposed to continue. I think you guys were saying in the intro that it's been a long day. Some of this has been very tedious, especially the technical details about the rifle. I saw the jury yawning a couple of times, and even Judge Cannon trying to suppress some yawning. She's trying to move this along. They're actually in a conference right now, she is, and the prosecutors and Routh, to figure out where things will go from here. He could start calling witnesses tomorrow. All right, we're live at the federal courthouse in Fort Pierce. I'm Mike Magnoli, CBS 12 News.
In Fort Pierce, Routh accused of attempting to assassinate President Trump, and the proceedings in the courtroom are moving slowly.
Yeah, the schedule has been disrupted because Routh has spent very little time on cross-examination, while prosecutors are being so meticulous that it has begun to frustrate Judge Cannon.
Yeah, CBS 12 News' I-Team Chief Mike Magnoli is joining us now to explain the reason for the holdup. Mike.
So this just in, the prosecution rests its case, but as you guys were saying, their last witness, the 39th witness, was taking a very long time. She was an FBI investigator, and the prosecution was talking her through all of the physical evidence that was recovered in the Nissan Xterra. That was Routh's getaway car. It's also where he was living. He had parked it at a gas station in South Bay, Florida. So all of the things that were inside of the car that they used to put him at the golf course at the crime scene, they went through that, and it got into the nitty-gritty detail. And as a result of that, Routh did not call his witnesses today. Earlier this week, there was some hope and some anticipation that the defense might begin its case. Remember, he's acting as his own attorney here, but now we're hearing that he won't start calling his witnesses until Monday. And we're hearing there's 2 or 3 of them. That could happen pretty quickly. He might go through their testimonies pretty quickly, so we might even see closing statements on Monday. If convicted, he is facing life behind bars. As you said, this is the attempted assassination on Donald Trump at the golf course last September. We'll be back out here on Monday. We'll let you know what happens next as this continues to unfold. We're live at the Fort Pierce Federal Courthouse. I'm Mike Magnoli, CBS 12 News.
As we begin tonight with the Ryan Routh case, Ryan Routh has now rested his case. He's accused, of course, of trying to assassinate former President Trump last year at his golf course.
Routh, acting as his own attorney, questioned 3 witnesses but chose not to testify himself.
Now, the judge eventually cut him off after his questioning strayed from courtroom rules.
We have live team coverage of the trial tonight. Our Treasure Coast reporter Jack Wu is reporting on the only expert witness for the defense.
And CBS 12 I-Team Chief Mike Magnoli will break down testimony from 2 character witnesses, both personal friends of Routh.
We begin tonight with Jack.
Jim, Liz, the first witness to take the stand was a former Marine sniper, and despite being called by the defense, he didn't give Routh a lot of the answers he was looking for. The little answers he did give came to an abrupt halt after Routh made a sore comment to the veteran, and the judge sent the jury out of the room. Routh trying to paint the picture of himself as an incompetent assassin during his questioning of former Marine sniper Michael McClay. The questions were mainly theoretical, with Routh often asking the witness to speculate. McClay said he would not, asking Routh to repeat himself multiple times. One glimmer of hope came for Routh when McClay said the gun jammed during testing, but that was quickly shut down during cross. Prosecutors and the judge rarely stopped Routh during questioning until he went way out of bounds. Routh asking the Marine if it took a special type of person to take a life. At that, the judge interrupted, calling for a recess. She told Routh that question would be struck from the record and he needed to focus and follow court procedure. I saw the jury look confused and shocked by Routh's style of questioning with his first witness. Prosecutors used cross to clarify that the rifle, while not in perfect condition, was still a deadly weapon with a round in the chamber when it was recovered from the crime scene. That first witness took the better part of an hour, but the next 2 were quick. Joining me now is CBS 12 I-Team Chief Mike Magnoli. We had 2 character witnesses come in the back half. What did you notice when they both took the stand?
Hey there, Jack. Hi, everybody. Well, you notice right away that they're very plain-spoken kind of country guys, that twang from the Carolinas, and they were on the stand as character witnesses, as you were saying, to talk about Routh's nonviolent personality. Can show you some courtroom sketches. One of the fellas was Marshall Hinshaw, and he had very personal stories about how when he was down on his luck, Ryan Routh gave him a place to stay. Ryan Routh was a fixture in their community, was talking about how there was a time in his life when he had a pregnant girlfriend and they had no place else to go, and Ryan Routh was really a lifeline for them. While that was very sentimental, the judge was getting irritated because it doesn't have anything to do with the facts of the case, right? And that's why she shut some of that down. Then there was a second character witness, kind of more of the same. The second character witness was a fella who was friends with Ryan Routh's son. They knew each other from skateboarding. And there again, we heard about how generous Ryan Routh was and about how there was never a history of violence. A couple of times, Ryan Routh would breathe heavily into the microphone and he would just kind of repeat things to himself. He would say, okay, okay, have I ever beat my children? And the judge and the jury were kind of looking at him like wondering where he was trying to go with that. So it was a very short case from the defense. So what happens next? Well, there was some discussion about the jury instructions, and then both sides will get to do a close tomorrow morning, and then this will go to the jury. He is looking at life behind bars if convicted on these charges. We're reporting from the Fort Pierce Federal Courthouse. For Jack Wu and myself, we'll send it back to you guys in the studio down there in West Palm Beach.
Ryan Routh's daughter has been in court since the trial began. She was distraught earlier today when his time to make his case ended so quickly. You can listen in.
He's the best man I've ever known, and he's done everything every day of his life to help anybody and everybody in his community and his children, his friends, his co-workers, his employees, everybody.
We heard from those two fellows on the stand.
Those are the only two fellows that they approved. And my dad has over 300 people on a list that he had asked to bring, and the only two they accepted were them.
We will be back in court tomorrow for closing arguments.